Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf instruction podcast that helps you take control of your game. Now, here's your host, the founder of Par Breakers Golf Academy and certified Golf Channel Swing Fix instructor, Bernard Sheridan.
So, Alison, welcome to Breaking Par. I'm so glad that you've had the opportunity to open up your schedule to be with us today.
Thanks, Bernard. I appreciate you having me on. I'm really excited about what you're doing here for not only the instruction community, but for the golf lover community as well. So I'm really thrilled to be a part of this.
So give us a little bit of insight deeper into where you are right now in your career and what of the major players that you're working with, their level of expertise. Are they mostly beginners? Are they intermediate players? Are you working with tour players? What's going on in your life right now?
Okay. Well, this past year, I've had a pretty major transition. I was an employed person as an assistant golf professional, first assistant for a long period of time. So really balancing my own passion of wanting to teach and focus on teaching with the regular, country club or golf club requirements of running tournaments and doing those sort of things. And so this past year, I had the opportunity to really branch out on my own and focus on teaching. So creating my own academy, creating my own school, and then being an independent instructor to focus truly on what my heart is passionate about. And so this opportunity was started in about May of this year, so still pretty new for me. And I finally found a home that I think a place for the longevity of my career at Wood Ranch Golf Club, which I just started at. And so being able to combine the elements of physical instruction with mental instruction has been a really great addition to the club. They're excited to have a director of instruction who is well-rounded to encompass all sorts of players at their club. So primarily the demographic that I work with is so vague, it's so general, because I have everything from beginners to people that are playing on the Symetra Futures Tour. I don't have any PGA or LPGA current players yet, but I have a lot of mini tour players who are looking to get onto that next level. I am also an assistant coach for Cal State Northridge, and so I work a lot with the college players there, not only on the physical parts of their game, but the mental parts as well. And so when I look at my scope of students, it ranges from this is the first time holding a golf club to this is how I want to make my living. So very wide.
Are a lot of the lessons that you do one-on-one, or do you do like group sessions?
I would say primarily my expertise and my niche is more of that one-on-one coaching style. I am responsible for creating the clinics and programs for Wood Ranch Golf Club, so there is some ability to do some of the beginner women's clinics or advanced women's clinics, as well as working with some different men's groups as well. So being able to do that has added a little bit to my toolbox, if you will, but I really like the one-on-one style, forming that relationship with a student, being with them for many years, working on their game, bringing them to the level that they want to be on. So looking at the breakdown of where I commit my time, most of that is going to be with one-on-one coaching.
Is the majority of those on average an hour session, or do you do longer sessions than that regularly or shorter?
I would say our industry kind of gets us in the lifestyle of a 30 to 60 minute session, and I would say 30 minutes tend to be okay with someone in my care, if you will, for a long period of time, maybe just checking in on one component of their game. But traditionally, more 60-minute lessons, I feel that gives us an opportunity to get to know each other for about 15 minutes, kind of get a really thorough, in-depth interview, if this is, let's say, a first-timer with a student, and then have about 45 minutes to really work on their game. So to break down an hour lesson, I like to have an opportunity to just see them hit a couple of different clubs as if I was just an observer on the range, be able to videotape and film them to get a couple of insights that maybe the human eye can't pick up, that the film can pick up, and then being able to diagnose sort of the root cause and explain to them the cause and effects of what's going on in their swing. And that 60 minutes still allows some time for us to implement some drill work, follow up how to practice, as well as just sort of sealing up the entire session and experience together.
Now, you mentioned the mental game. Do you do a lot of work with your students on that side of it? And when you do, is it more on the actual golf course or on the lesson tee?
It's kind of split right now. I'm actually a registered marriage and family therapist intern, so I'm working on my license hours to be a licensed psychotherapist. And so, although that's more on the clinical side, my passion and my goal is to really combine that through the athletic lens. And so, the athletes that I work at, it's pretty much split 50-50. A lot of athletes will come into the office, and so we'll work in a counseling center, just in a traditional, therapeutic setting where we can talk about a lot of the emotional elements of the game that might be going on for them. And then from there, I like to bring them out onto the golf course, and things that we talked about in the therapy room, we actually bring onto the golf course. So that's traditionally how a lot of my elite players will work with me on the mental level. With the average golfer, if you will, or the traditional golfer that's maybe a mid to a higher handicapper, a lot of that mental work is done through the lesson tee. So as we're working on some physical elements, I'll start to plant some seeds of how they can change their mental approach to their game, in hopes of being able to get them on the golf course and work with them in a setting of what's it going to be like when you play your weekend game, what's it going to be like when you play your competition, and how can we use these things that we learned on the range mentally and physically on the golf course and implement it into play. So a lot of different ways that we can go when working on the mental game.
Are there any mental keys that you have them work on as part of a pre-shot routine?
Yes, absolutely. I think the golfers are pretty well versed these days with the advancements of Vision 54 and a lot of the sports psych books that consumers can reach out to about the actual physical motions of a pre-shot routine. So I think a lot of people understand, okay, I'm supposed to stand behind it, I'm supposed to line up, I'm supposed to go through the same routine. But the element that I think needs some assistance and that can be helped from the instructor's point of view is, what are you actually feeling? Not necessarily what are you thinking, but what are you feeling right now? When you stand behind the golf ball and you go through your pre-shot routine, do you feel confident? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel doubtful? And so that's sort of the areas that I like to attack is once they understand the motions of what a pre-shot routine might do, let's get a little bit deeper. Let's get a little bit more analytical about how are you feeling about what are you doing.
Good, excellent. So when it comes to training aids, are there any specific training aids that you like to use or that you recommend for our listeners out there?
I think a lot of, I'm prone to a lot of household goods that can be used as training aids. So simple things such as sprinkling baby powder on grass to be able to help with alignment versus just a traditional alignment rod. There's some interesting things that you can do with just, household goals. Taking rubber bands and putting them on the toe and the heel of a putter, and wrapping them around so that you really focus on centerness of contact. So taking just basic, ordinary things and making them into training aids is something that I really like to do. But for any golfer who's learning to improve their game, I think having some sort of video feedback is helpful. Nowadays, there's this device, I think it's called a caddy cam, or some different options where you slit your cell phone into it and it actually attaches to either your golf bag or an alignment rod, and you're able to film yourself. So if you know what to look for and you know what you're working on, then you've got that instant feedback with our cell phone cameras that are pretty much high speed these days. So I really recommend something that can help you with video feedback, whether it's a V1 software or just the camera on your cell phone. I personally use Athlete Nation and Golf Swing Fix to do any of my video analysis. But having something for alignment is really helpful. So whether you use baby powder and draw lines on the ground or use basic alignment rods, and always having something with a mirror, so for instant visual feedback. Eyeline tools are really, really great because it's a lot of mirror product, so you can see what you're doing when you line up. You can see what you're doing in the middle of your swing. And so I like to use a lot of that, but again, that can also be made from home as well, just purchasing an old mirror or getting something from, say, Goodwill, and then sort of shaping it for your own for a training aid device.
Sure, sure. So I know that I like the idea of homemade stuff because in that way it's something that's right around the house, and that if they understand how to implement that into getting some feedback on what they're doing, now they're not spending a lot of money on these gadgets and things like that. The other thing that I like about that is that there a lot of times training aids actually have a club head on it too. So if they have that in their bag and they're going out onto the golf course, it could be noted as a 15th club because they could actually hit a ball with it. So now they're breaking the rules. So those are the type of things that I know for me. I like alignment sticks a lot, and then other things like water bottles and just things like that to help them. And I'm a big component on the powder thing.
Mm-hmm.
I actually use a spray foot powder and either spray the club face or spray the turf so that they can see where they're bottoming out or so they can focus on a different point. So the majority of the players that you're seeing then are I'm assuming are middle of the road type players.
You have 30 handy, kind of a big gap. But I would say if I had to really get very specific, most of my players are going to be between a 10 and 15 handicap. They're kind of in a scoring range that's maybe just sort of bottomed out, and they want to take it to the next level, or they've scored that 83, 85 range for a long period of time, and they want to start being more consistent in the 70s. I would say that's probably the biggest chunk of my demographic.
So players on that level, what are you working on the most? Are you zeroing in on more short game stuff? Are you focusing more on off the tee driver? What do you find that you're working the most with those players?
With them, I think it's really sort of fine tuning how they play the game. So they're able to create shots that stay on the golf course. And so very rarely are they ever, getting scores of nines or tens. So it's really just how can I shave off a couple of strokes to get into the scoring range that I'm comfortable with. So a lot of that work is done on the golf course. So one-on-one coaching on the golf course, figuring out, are we picking good targets? Are we being accurate with the distances with our clubs? If your 7-iron really goes 150, are you planning to have it go in a range, or do you think that you hit your irons much further than they're actually going? And strategizing too, when you get into a poor position, how can you recover without trying to make hero attempts that you might see someone make on the PGA Tour that's probably a higher risk for an average golfer. So being able to play the game from poor positions, out of divots in deep rough, behind trees. So a lot of different thinking of approaching. But I think as a whole, there's a widespread thinking that if you want to shave shots off of your game, to work on the short game. And I think the recent book by Mark Brody, Every Shot Counts, has started to make us think differently. It's not necessarily who's the best putter or who has the best short game, but who's hitting it closer to the hole. And so after reading that book, I felt that I've sort of changed my philosophy as well in approaching students, that we don't need to spend hours on the putting green and the chipping green. You need to have a pretty well versatile toolbox in the short game area. There's no doubt about that. But how about let's hit more greens? Let's hit more fairways. Let's hit more greens.
Yeah, so Ben Hogan, who was not a great putter, that was what his major focus was becoming the best iron player into the green that he could be. And the reason why he said that, you want to putt better, hit it closer to the hole.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny that now that we see a book that's really starting to break down the statistics of what is really going on, it goes right back to what Ben Hogan said, and which is was said in when? Oh my gosh, like the 1950s. So it's the game doesn't change a whole lot, but the insight in the way that we look at it begins to change. So speaking of Ben Hogan and Tour, who was one of the top tour players, you play in some tour events on the LPGA yourself. So when you do that, what is the series of things that you go through to prepare for an event, and how do you mentally get prepared, and how do you get prepared physically?